Whoa, this hangout on air is live. That's right. It's me, Gazbot, and there's Mike Emirates giving me the oh, and that lets you know that we're here for our 168-hour. Wait, what? Yeah, 168 hours. I checked the notes. That's correct. That's the 1 week check-in, our comic book check-in. And Mikey, why don't you give us a theme song?
All right, here we go. There we go.
Whoa!
Whoa! What's on our plate? It's 168. I'm telling you straight. That's 168. It's me and my mate for 168. Yeah, it's going to be great.
That's
Go
fantastic.
get some cake.
Go get some cake. What a slant rhyme that was. Excellently done. Well, hello to everybody watching live in the chat, and hello to everybody watching after it's been recorded later on the YouTube. This is episode 4 of the Mike and Gaz, or the Gaz and Mike comic book hangout update thingamajig. So let's get right to it. What's been going on with you, Mike, this week?
Well, it has been quite a week. Let's see. I really only had about 3 days this week instead of like a full week because we had Father's Day coming up. And for the first time in, God, I don't even know how long, I actually spent a whole weekend with my dad and his wife at their place to help him learn how to use eBay pretty much for the first time. Which,
that sounds like it would take a whole weekend.
Yeah. I also have never sold anything on eBay except for, I think, once when it was first like a thing. I sold, regrettably, I sold all of my He-Man toys when I was in high school. If I could rewind time, I would definitely go back and not do that. But anyway, so it was my first time doing eBay, so I had to learn and teach at the same time. And, you know, it was kind of a little anxiety inducing building up to it because I don't like spending the night anywhere. That's just never been something that I've enjoyed. So I tend
Even at your own house?
Well, my own house is fine, yeah. But even some nights, yeah, I just prefer not to sleep at all anywhere. But as far as like art goes, so I've really only had like 3 days because a lot of what I was attempting to accomplish that weekend spilled over into Monday. And so I lost my Monday too. It was also an early day for Mel. So the whole day just sort of wrapped up very quickly. But I don't know. Should I get into like what I wanted to accomplish or?
Well, I think the way we've been breaking it down, and you can do what you want, is first, like, what did you want to accomplish and what did you accomplish?
Right.
And then we'll go to me and then challenges and what about next week? We've kind of, there's a lot of cross-pollination. Like you already talked about some of your challenges right up front.
Yeah, I guess so.
So that's fine. So what did you want to do? What did you say you wanted to do? And then what did you do?
All right, let's see what I said I wanted to do. I had a little list here. Where did that list go?
Let's talk about you, the fans. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for hanging out. And if you're in the chat right now, remember at the end, we always end with a Q&A session. So if you have any Qs, we'll give you some As. Now back to you, Mike.
So I totally lost my list. I don't know. It was just here.
Well, we know what that should be on your next week. Have your list.
Yeah, I have my list. I wanted to do 100 gesture studies for my homework for the Michael Hampton drawing course. Gotcha. So I also wanted to have another concept page done for Sisyphine Complex. I wanted to have the weapon done. I wanted to do some watercolor studies. And just like every week, I wanted to have a video done for my printer series. Which, incidentally, because the video from last week took so long, I ended up finishing that as kind of part of this week. So, but I didn't do a new video because actually gotcha. I usually do those either Saturday or Sunday, and I was completely gone Saturday and Sunday. So
you basically you wanted to finish up the last video and do a new one. But you just got one out instead of two.
Just got one out instead of two. But it just wasn't physically possible unless I sacrificed from other things. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the loss on this one and I'll do it, you know, this coming weekend. So did I accomplish any of that? I don't know if I accomplished all the gesture studies. I'll throw up, I've got just a hodgepodge of stuff here. Ooh. But Let me skip ahead to some of this stuff.
If you guys freeze frame that, you could read his whole story.
You can. I did start kind of numbering some of these, but I stopped numbering them at some point.
How long do each of these take you? Roughly?
Not long at all. These are actually
just ballpark it.
Yeah, maybe like a minute to 2 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
The whole point of the exercise too is all about line of action and using as limited of line as possible for most of these. So what did he say? It boiled down to like the essence of the pose. So trying to use one line if possible. But I'm accustomed to life drawing, so I'm not learning how to do life drawing. So I do kind of have my own stuff I try to do as well. But anyways, so I was getting really bored with it. So to help me get through it, I actually started doing a gesture drawing course on Schoolism. Since I'm signed up for Schoolism, they have a whole thing on gesture drawing. So then that gave me some new ideas and kind of kept it fun and interesting, which are some of these, like experimenting with silhouette and shape more than like just the figures and stuff. Right. So I did a bunch of them. It was over the course of the 3 days that I had, so it wasn't like all in one big chunk. But for the most part,
those look like they took more than a minute or two.
Yes, yeah. There was some that were like 5-minute poses. Like some of these were a little longer. I think that's it. There's more, but this is what I took snapshots of.
It looks like you got a lot of good work in there, though. A lot of good study.
Yeah, and I think I got pretty close to getting 100, actually. I think if I were to count these up, I think I did get 100, if not close to.
Right.
So, yeah, and it was good. I'm getting a little more loosened up, and so that's good. As far as my the concept page I wanted to do, I just kept hitting brick walls everywhere. I had one solid day of just learning everything there is to know about guns. And I really feel like I took myself to school and I really do know how they work now. So that's pretty cool. But that's all time spent. That was just research, and that's what a lot of this is actually, is taking what I would learn and then kind of writing it down in a way that I can apply it to what I need it for. So I started.
It is amazing, not just that you, like looking at your notes, not just that you studied guns, like different types of the way they look, but the way they function inside, and you broke them down and broke them into pieces, which is already way above and beyond what most people do, myself included. But then I see that you have notes next to it, like as though you were studying for a test, where you can answer like, well, the firing pin on a semi-automatic will be like, that's, your guns now.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I found a really awesome program called World of Guns. It's on Steam. And the program itself is free, which I thought was pretty awesome. And then you can buy like packs of different kinds of weapons. And so I already had a few that I was studying up to that point. And so I just bought the pack that had those guns in it. And it allows you to look at them with like an X-ray, and you can hide different pieces, and you can play the animations in slow motion and go 360 around it. So you could actually like see everything about how these things work, and you could even disassemble them down to the screw, like literally the whole thing. It was pretty amazing. So I did spend a lot of time with that to like learn how they work, because part of it, you might look at it and think like, all right, that's really unnecessary, you don't need all of that, and I completely agree. But for this particular comic, I want to know these kinds of things because I want my character to know these kinds of things. And so I figured somewhere down the line, maybe not quite in this issue, but certainly in my covers, certainly in future issues, this is going to suddenly become important. And I think especially for like a design aesthetic of what I want to do with the covers. With the covers, I want a very technical kind of feel. I want to do a lot of exploded diagram kind of stuff. And I would like to have moments where the character is either cleaning the gun or taking it apart, etc., stuff like that. I want that to actually be an integral part of her character, is just being very tech savvy like that. And so all this research is a good thing. Did it help me design the gun and actually get to the end result I was looking for? Not this week, but it's there. I know how it needs to work and why certain things have to be in certain places and stuff. And I've been researching tons of like future tech too, which was pretty neat. So kind of similar to the previous week where I was working on the character sheet and I didn't finish it. It's like I didn't accomplish what I set out to do, but this week I definitely will because I'm right at the cusp of having that information, and now it's just putting it together and then illustrating it in different views. So
Right.
I think overall it was still a good week.
I agree. And while you may have not accomplished what you set out to do, quote unquote, it's not as though you failed. You put work in. You
Oh yeah,
forwarded the project. You are further along than you were. You've learned more than you've learned. So it's not like you didn't put the time in.
right.
It just went to a different area than you thought it would. And
Yep.
while I do agree that it seems excessive, everything you've like all the research you put in, for the book you're doing, it's not. If I was doing a superhero book and there's criminals with guns or whatever,
Right.
then I just need to look at what a generic gun looks like.
Yeah.
If I'm doing however, the Punisher, I better understand guns. And while the character you're doing isn't the Punisher, it seems equally important to
Yeah.
your story. It's not just a prop; it's a point in the story. So
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison. Yeah.
Cool.
And then as far as watercolor practice, I didn't get to that. Just flat out didn't get to it. I could have,
right,
but I didn't.
That's fine. Well, and you made a judgment call that working on your comic and other things was more important, which I agree.
Yeah, definitely. So
cool.
That's about that. How about you, sir? I had a list of what you were supposed to accomplish, but I lost it. So
I actually lost my list too, but I'm pretty sure I remember because I think I more or less did what I set out to do.
Oh, cool.
So basic. Oh, you know what? Let me put up my let me screen share so I can share what my visual aids are. I gotta start doing a slideshow the way you do. I always just share Photoshop. So here we are. There's Photoshop. So the first thing I said I wanted to do is, like you, get a video up. And I had started this last week, but I finished it up. And this is, I went to sell toys and art at the San Jose Toy Show, which is near me in the Bay Area, California. And so that's the video that is now up on the channel that you are watching, that you could check it out. I have a lot of those con videos, but that was the most recent. So I finished that up. That was good. Let me close that. The next thing, last week I had done, this is where I was. This is the inks for my Godzilla versus Destroya 11x17 print, and I wanted to get it colored up and ready to make into a print.
Wow.
So I think I showed you this last week, right?
Yeah, but it's
okay.
Looking awesome.
Well, thank you. So I did get the colors done. Here's a in progress stage shot. One of the things I was having trouble with, this is what they call burning Godzilla from this movie, and he's sort of in meltdown mode where he's like glowing, and he's, by the end of, well, I don't want to spoil. Well, I guess it came out in the 90s. If you don't want to know the end of the movie, don't listen. But by the end of the movie, he literally melts down and explodes and dies, like this version of Godzilla. So this is like the big climax when he's fighting Destroya. Destroya is in its final form, and it's bigger than Godzilla, and how could he ever beat him? But he's like so supercharged with this about to die power that he's bursting with smoke and energy. So I had a really hard time figuring out how I was going to show that. And I started using some glow effects in Photoshop that you could see I started here, like on the tail especially.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it, but I didn't love it. And as I went in more, I started layering the different shades of orange. And so you can hear it's a little bit more refined, where I kind of made it like multiple shades of orange. And I forget what the word is for it, but I made the line work into color. So instead of, that was black, but I turned it orange, and then I colored a different orange, and then I had the glow, and it wasn't 100% there, but once I got here, I knew it started coming together. Similarly, I turned the line work on the smoke from black to white and gave it like a little bit lower opacity so you could see through a little bit. And then I had the fire effect, and a lot of what I did on this one, which I don't usually do that much, is removing line work, treating it a little bit more painterly. I mean, it still looks very comic booky, but like that fire blast is very different than the way I would normally do it. And I'm happy with it, especially because of the type of, again, supercharged fire. And Godzilla normally doesn't have that color. It's just at the end of this movie, Godzilla did. Now, one thing you'll notice is Destroya has this horn up top, and and it charges up and like slices with this orange and yellow. And as I was working on it, I'm like, man, there's a lot of orange and yellow. Like I got the blast, I got Godzilla, and I didn't even finish the effect here, but I was already realizing it was a bit too much. So I decided to change that. And this is actually the final piece here.
Oh,
so
wow.
I removed the effect on the horn and just made it its normal dormant horn. I also changed the lightning because I had drawn lightning, but this is more accurate to what it looked like in the movie. And he also, Destroya, has a purple beam blast. So I didn't have the blast coming out, but I had it like he's charging up for it to add a different color, and the light kind of pops him out against Godzilla a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so it sucked because I kind of had gotten really far along, and it seems like a simple change, but I had to like erase line work, and I had already had several layers of color that I had to redo. But I think all that extra work was worth it because I think the colors are better balanced now.
Mm-hmm.
As an interesting side note, I do have the original ink piece, which I'll be putting up for sale. And anybody that buys that, it still had the line work for the horn attack. So it'll be a slightly different version of the battle with that.
Cool.
So thank you. So I got that done. And then I already put it up on my Etsy store, even though I haven't printed it, because I'm doing it as a pre-order, which is something I haven't, yeah, which is something I haven't really done before. And if anybody's interested, it will be up for pre-order until the 25th of this month, at which point I'm going to have to put the print order in. And my thought was I sell these normally for $20 each. And the pre-order, you could get it at half price, $10. So this is a little bit of a commercial. I apologize, but it's also, but I'm bringing it up because it's relevant to my thought process of how to handle things. Because normally I say, hey, maybe I'll sell 30 of this, and I order 30, and there's a certain amount. The more you order, you get a cheaper discount, and then there's the shipping and all that stuff. But I said, if I knew for a fact I was selling like 5 or 10 or like however many ahead of time, it would help it offset the cost that like the outlay of cost that I'm doing. There'd be less of a risk, and I would know that I'm going to sell at least that many. So I thought, well, if I give it as a pre-order, and it won't normally I ship within a few days, but I said, this won't ship for like a month. And so the people who pre-order it, they have to wait a month, but they get it at half price. And I get less money, but I get more security in my print run. So as of now, I've only gotten 1 order or 2 orders, I think. But, even those few help make the difference. And, maybe I'll pick up more by the end of next week.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
So that was something that wasn't really on my list, the way I put it up on Etsy and market it. But I think I'm going to if it goes at all well, I think that might be my new standard of a new print. Hey, when it first comes out, you can get it for half price, and then afterwards it goes to regular price. So,
cool.
like I said, defer risk to me and hopefully reward people that follow me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. So there's that. And then what is this? This is nothing. Okay, so I did the video. I wanted to color the print and finish it. The next thing is I wanted to work on my next print, which I did, which is Shin Godzilla or Godzilla Resurgence, which is the new movie that came out in Japan, not the legendary one. So I did the roughs, and this is just like you could see, I started with kind of a gesture, and then I refined that gesture a bit. And I was looking at a lot of action figures, so you could see the way I broke it down, like kind of modularly, especially with these monsters that have this sort of alligator skin and detail everywhere. A lot of times I find it easier to look at the action figures because you could see definite cuts where the articulation is. So I'll look at the action figures first and then go in and start making it look more like the character. So you see here, this is when I was actually looking at more reference from the movie to make it look a little bit more like the character. And then, oops, let me close that. Then this was the final like digital pencils, as it were. And I also put in some background buildings and things, which I wasn't originally going to do. And then this is Smoke and Fire, and I have him. This version of Godzilla has a lot of different energy attacks, but I just did the smallest one possible because I really wanted to focus on the crazy, like scarred up zombie-looking detail on the body because that's kind of what he's known for. And this took me less time than the last one, even though it's like arguably more detailed, just because it was only one character instead of 2 interacting. So this was my goal, was to get here and then also to get the inks done because like the last one, I could just clean this up and go from here, but I wanted to have an inked piece that I could then later sell. Oops, that's the Horror A4. And I thought I had those pictures up. Let me see 1 second, because I did start the inks. Unfortunately, this is the one area I failed. I did not finish the inks, but I got pretty far, so I don't feel like I'm that far off. And like I said, I kind of gave myself a few other jobs in there. Sorry, 1 sec. Why don't you vamp for a second while I look for those pictures?
Well, here we are at our commercial break. Don't forget, you can pre-order print now for half off for a limited time. That helps the channel and one of our creators. So,
all right. Well, I'm back. I can't find it, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to cancel the screen share. If I can remember how to do that. Okay, I'm back. I have it right over here on the table, so I'm just going to pick it up, bring it to the camera, but I have to put my headphones down to do it.
Do 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 do. Got to unplug the tube, bring the box.
Sorry, it was plugged in. It's still taped onto my light box, and I don't want to untape it because it's not finished and I'll lose registration.
Right on.
But you can see I've gotten pretty far. I still have to finish this leg and then the background details, but this is most of it. And I did something. Well, I wanted to show pictures of in progress, but you could kind of see here. I did something different.
Oh yeah.
Because he's so heavy and he's very dark colored. He's more closer to black than green, and I wanted to make sure there was a lot of heavy black to delineate the folds, because if I get up close, it's just detail on detail and line on line, and that could easily blur into a mess. So I took a fat Copic marker and went in and just hit all the shadows first to make sure. And so like originally the whole thing looked like a kind of a bad coloring book. Then I've gone back in and done the detail, and I might even go in and do another little detail pass at the very end. But that was, again, it's something I haven't done before, but I think it really helped, pop out the differentiate, joints and things.
Definitely. That looks awesome.
Thank you. And so I'm a little bummed that I couldn't get it done, but I feel okay with the progress I made. It's the hard work's over. I just got to finish that leg and do the background. So that's,
you're practically done.
Yeah. The other thing I had on my list, which I'll go back to screen share real quick, is to do 30 minutes on the Horror A4, my independent kaiju comic, which I did. It doesn't look like much. Last week I had worked on this top panel, and this is what I consider digital pencils. This still needs to be digitally inked for those that are unaware. So I have the roughs, are these ones here. And last week I did this panel up top, but part of what I did was flip it because I realized for continuity it didn't make sense. He was getting slammed going the other way. Now, the way we read comics, left to right is more energy. So he's getting slammed now right to left, which is like a no-no, which is less dramatic, less forceful. But with the panel before it was incorrect. It was like flipped so that it didn't make logical sense. So I had to decide, did I want it to make logical sense or did I want it to have more impact power? And I went with logical. I might change my mind again later, but that was part of what I did, was readjusting that. And then I went ahead and started doing the digital pencils on this panel, which is obviously the next moment after he fell. And I didn't finish it, but 30 minutes is not a lot of time. That's about all I got done. But better this than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I, with the exception of finishing the inks on Shin, I pretty much hit all my goals. So I'm pretty happy about this week.
Sweet, man. Awesome.
Thank you.
Good week.
I think so. Yeah. Well, so speaking of weeks, do you want to talk about any challenges and impediments you came upon this week?
Sure. Well, the main one was just simply not being home, and so that was that whole weekend. I'd say another challenge is just something that I deal with only occasionally now, but when I do, it can be pretty rough and it can make my days a little harder to get through, is anxiety, especially as it pertains to my family.
Right.
Not everybody, but just there's history, and so even if things are going to be great, there's like some psychological thing that goes on that assumes it's not, and that can really psych me out. So on my, the day before that weekend was pretty rough, but I got through it, and that's not always the case. And so even though that was a challenge, it didn't hold me up. It was still business as usual. Maybe it had something to do with me feeling like things weren't clicking. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. Not dwelling on it or ruminating or anything. Just kind of, we're past it now. The other challenge was actually after the weekend, having, the whole point of that weekend was to try to help my dad with eBay. And we didn't really accomplish that. So that actually spilled over into Monday a little bit. And it'll probably spill over into this week as well, tomorrow actually. But, it is what it is. And when you commit to something, especially if you commit to helping somebody with something, sometimes you just have to see it through. And so
which is why you shouldn't commit to things.
Exactly. Actually, that's not a bad point. But as far as that goes, the only challenges really outside of that, I think artistically, is just sort of just being in a funk and not really not feeling like I'm producing what I wanted to produce this week. But just like we talked about before we started this, you kind of look back on what you did and realize, oh, well, I did more than what I thought I did. I just didn't necessarily accomplish what it was that I set out to do. And I think sometimes, for me at least, when I'm not like exceeding what I set out to do, I start feeling really guilty,
I
because
agree with that
that's
completely.
that's kind of my default. So even like right now, it's very discouraging sometimes to not be producing more than I set out to produce, and I have to just keep reminding myself that it's not about showing off. It's not about, you know, exceeding expectations. It's about putting in the time and doing the work. And
Mike,
you know,
it's not about showing off. It's about showing up. I'm
that's
saying it
good.
like a jerk, but I mean it. Like
No,
just
that's good.
showing up and doing the work. That's the victory
Yeah.
right there.
And that's what I was getting at. It is, you know, because I know myself, and I know my history, and I know my days that are way worse than anything, you know, now. And
Right.
so showing up at all can be worth a pat on the back some days too, you know. And that actually kind of sort of a side tangent kind of thing, but something that I wanted to touch on, because Chris and Marsh touched on it in their recent video. Chris and Marsh are also doing a weekly check-in. For those of you who don't know, they're also a part of the hundreds. They're doing a weekly check-in just like we are.
I'll put a link below.
Sure, yeah. And they had brought up about you know, kind of looking at everybody else and seeing like, well, so and so has more time, or so and so, you know, this situation is different or whatever. And you know, I think it just kind of brings to light that you and I, out of this group of people who are doing this type of video series thing, you and I arguably have more time than most, or potentially could have. I don't want to say we do.
No, potentially could have, I think, is the best way to put it.
But you know, in reality, it's usually not the case. Like, we still have stuff that is going on too, and our days don't always go the way we want them to go. And there's new things that get tacked on to that, that are, you know. And I often look at, you know, someone like Josh Kemble, or Cory, or a lot of people actually, and I can look at them and say, damn, like with less time, they're getting more done.
Yeah.
You know?
I've heard a theory that, and this may not be true, but I've heard the theory that like you if you like if you like my friends that have like had children or have whatever, they're like, oh man, you know, I used to have all day to draw, and I'd like, you know, play video games and sit around, and then once eventually I drag myself to the table and draw for a few hours. But now that I work until 5 and I get home at 6, and then my kid will, and then I have like an hour before I go to bed, the second I could get like that 1 hour is like the most productive hour ever, because there's, and I could kind of see that because, you know, when I was in school, when I had a 9-to-5 job, there was a lot more urgency to get the work done. I mean, there's urgency to get it done now because I want to get it done. I want to make money. I want to share my stuff with the world. But it was like, oh, I've only got an hour before I got to go to bed, or I've got 2 hours before I have to be to work, or, you know, oh, I have 45 minutes of study hall, and it was like, let me fill all that time with art. And when you have more time, sometimes you lose that urgency.
Yeah. Lose the urgency, or you find other ways to fill it. Like, I know you and I are in similar situation where we have more home responsibilities because of our position, and so I end up taking on different tasks because I know they need to get done, and I think, well, I have a lot of time, so I can do this. But then that project becomes the day, whatever it may be, you know.
Even little things, because sometimes, you know, stuff's coming up, like, well, I got to do the laundry and dishes today or whatever. But sometimes you kind of think you know what's coming up, and then just a dumb thing like, oh, can you pick up milk? And it's like, okay, and you know, maybe that's a half hour. Or maybe it's a half hour, but then once you're out, you're like, oh, I got to go to the bank too. And all of a sudden you've lost 2 hours, or, you know, and it's not like you're being lazy or wasting time, but just life happens even when you don't have a set schedule of things you have to do. Like stuff comes up.
Yeah, it's true. And so I think, and as far as challenges go, yet again, I go back to my main theme that I've been doing this whole time, with trying to put in more time on my work. You know, this week I almost hit the 8 hours a day every day for the days that I was able to put in time. And so, you know, it comes down to that again for this week too. The big challenge is going to be sitting down, clocking in, and finishing my day, and then doing everything else, which is it's harder than it seems. I feel like sometimes I'm not as motivated, so I want to do the dishes, or I want to fix that cabinet, or we've had the ant thing again, and now they're in our living room. But you know, unless it's urgent like that, where they're swarming all over the couch or something, like I can put that stuff off. I can, you know, maybe assign an hour or something, and then I get done what I get done, and then it's time for work, like something like that, to kind of
I could definitely relate though, because it's sometimes if you're not feeling motivated, if you're tired, if whatever, going and doing the laundry, going and vacuuming the house, it's not like it's fun,
Right.
but it's there's less brain power. You don't have to think about it, you just clean.
Yeah.
And there it's definitely a 1 2 3 step and then it's accomplished. So even though art is more fun and more satisfying, it's difficult, and there's a potential you're gonna fail at whatever you're trying, and you're putting all this mental energy in, and it's like, oh, but well, I do need to vacuum, and I could do that in 20 minutes, and I know for sure I will do it exactly right, and people will see the results when they get home, and so
Yeah.
so it is weirdly seductive to want to go do menial chores around the house when you're stuck with drawing, but
Yep.
yeah.
Or even like just pick up the cat and pet the cat. Now cats have one
That's
one
true.
less thing.
I'm lucky enough that I have an office where I keep the door closed so the cat can't get in
No,
because
that's good. Yeah, ours will he goes nuts if he doesn't get at least a little attention, which is fine. I'd probably feel the same way if I lived somebody and they refused to look at me or interact with me. I'd probably be like, hey, I'm here. Yeah, exactly like that.
Cool.
But what about you? What about challenges that you either had or perceive for the future?
Well, a little bit of what you said, working from home and just house stuff calling to me. Let me look at my little list here. Tuesday I did. Oh, well, Tuesday I did good. I just mostly worked. And then Wednesday I got sidetracked with a little bit of house cleaning and things like that. But Thursday, I normally teach a comic book art class at my local comic store Thursday, but that's on sort of indefinite hiatus the last couple of weeks. And still had to go there and have a meeting with the owner and stuff. We're talking about restructuring it and making it different, whatever. But so it still took all the same amount of time that it would have,
Okay.
even though I didn't teach it. So I kind of lost half a day there because I say local, but it's about an hour away. So it's like an hour there, an hour back. And then, of course, while I was down there, I got dinner with a friend, which wasn't necessary, but so then Friday, I had a very productive day. Saturday and Sunday, complete wash. Saturday, we were hanging out with friends and like driving down the coast, which I knew was going to happen. Sunday, I thought I'd get a lot of work done. And I thought I'd get like the Shin Godzilla. Basically, I had everything done except for Shin Godzilla. So I thought Sunday I would do like the roughs and the inks, and then I was like, and then Monday maybe I'll do the colors and come in having done more than I said, like what we were talking about. But Sunday being Father's Day for us is also weird, which I won't get into the details. But it was nothing bad happened, but both Q and I had motivation to not dwell on the fact that it was Father's Day. So she was like, we bought these Billy bookcases and are like, let's build it and let's, do that. And I'm like, it's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to work, but I know she needed something to take her mind off, and it was something that needed to do. So we went ahead and, built those, and it looks great. We built these new bookcases and we put our books up, but it was an all day thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get any work done then. So then Monday, I'm like, I gotta work. But Q, my wife, had a doctor's appointment and she kind of wanted me to go with her. So I did. And then this is what I was talking about before. Then while we were out, she's like, you know what? We need to go to Best Buy and also to the bank. And I'm like, all right, okay. So we did, but I didn't start working until like 4. And for those that have followed me, I've been trying not to have caffeine too much. But we got back and I had a couple sodas, and she's like, I thought you're not doing it. I'm like, I plan on being up late tonight. So I had dinner and stuff, but from 4 until 4, with the exception of a break for dinner, I worked on that Shin Godzilla. I took it from 0 all the way to almost completely inked, but I did that all like last night, basically. And then I woke up this morning and did a little bit more work on the inks. And that's kind of how I managed to get that much done, was just by cranking it out last night.
Damn.
But so a lot of the same things, like the unpredictability of life, trying to know what's coming up. I do need to start timing myself again, because I have rough ideas how long things take me. But I meant to time this whole thing, the whole Shin Godzilla, and I didn't start timing it until I started working on the inks. And to give you an idea, the inks I have so far was about 2 hours ish. And that's not including any of the roughs and the digital pencils, which took even longer, like getting that original digital drawing, and then the printing and setting it up in the light box and all that stuff. That was hours and hours and hours. But just the actual inks, once I had the type pencils, I did about 2 hours on it, which was actually quicker than I thought. But again, I didn't time the time before it, which I'm guessing was more like 6 hours, 8 hours. Who knows? So challenges into next week. Actually, I have a different list here. Challenges into next week are many because well, today I don't know how much more work I'll get done because I'm going to a movie later tonight to see a Riff Tracks thing locally.
Oh, cool.
It is cool, but again, that's time. And
Sure.
Q has the car, so I have to walk there, which is fine.
Ooh.
But that means that's an hour of walking there and back in addition to the 2. So
Ah,
I'm going to try to do a little bit more inking, and then it's like that's the end of my day, which is weird to say because I want to do this, but it's still,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I know what you mean though.
Yeah, there's Yada Smelkin saying that friend is keeping you from your goals. Yes, all friends keep us from our goals. Friends, family, video games, pets, everything good in life keeps us from our
Everything.
goals. So, but you got to live your life and be a person. So,
Oh yeah.
so that's today. Wednesday and Thursday, I have mostly free, so I'm hoping to get a lot of work done then. Because Thursday, again, I don't have the class this week. Friday, I have a caricature job on site I have to go do. So that's going to take up most of my day.
Cool.
I can maybe do a little work before or after, but I got to drive there, work for a few hours, and drive back. Saturday and Sunday, I have nothing, but it's, as you know, with a spouse or a living girlfriend or whatever, partner of any kind,
Yeah.
family, weekends very often could turn into like, well, you don't get to do any artwork because we're doing other things. So
always random.
I don't know what's going on with that. And then Monday, I have to start getting ready for a trip to New Jersey because we're leaving Tuesday morning. Which brings me to my next point. We normally do these on Tuesday, but next week, if you're available, I think we should do it on Monday.
No, can't.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll call you from the plane then.
No, that's fine.
Okay, yeah. So for anybody watching, we normally do this Tuesday, but it'll probably be Monday. I'm guessing around the same time, but we'll, let you know. So next week for me is a 6-day week. Well, you too now, but even those 6 days, I won't have a lot. So when we get to what we're going to try to do, I'm going to be way scaled back of what I'm going to try to do next week.
Cool. That's fine with me.
Okay. Well, what are you going to try to do with your time next week, sir?
Let's see. So, one thing I forgot to mention is I'm actually losing a day as well over this next weekend. So, I think it's either Saturday or Sunday. I'm not sure which one, but we're doing Father's Day 2.0. We're going to drive out west to go and see Mel's father and grandfather, actually, both of them. Both really cool guys. Love her grandfather. Her grandfather's awesome. He's like, I don't know how old he is. He's got to be at least in his late 80s, and he loves doing like woodworking and stuff, and he makes little like race cars and tractors and mechanical windmill things or whatever. Really fun. So I'm looking forward to it, but that's going to be a whole day because we have to rent a car and drive out there, which is, I think, a minimum of about 2 hours if it's nice and there's no traffic, and then 2 hours back. So that's already 4 hours out of the day gone, plus however long we're going to be there. But anyway, so that's just one day. Next week, I want to try to finish that page, the one that I wanted to finish this week. I want to finish that.
The design page for all the weaponry?
For the weapon, yeah. Gotcha. I think it's achievable. Where I'm at now, I have a much better idea of what it's supposed to be and how it works. So it's really just a matter of like finalizing a design.
Right.
So I think it's doable. I don't want to promise any more than that as far as the comic goes, just because I'm seeing a pattern, and I'm probably just gonna barely finish that by Monday.
Well, and yeah, again, we're gonna have, aside from whatever personal things we have coming up, it's only gonna be 6 days as opposed to 7.
Yeah. So, and minus that one day, chop it down to 5. And that's one of those things too that I have to do it here because all of my finalization is digital and it's putting the whole presentation kind of together. I can't do that in a sketchbook on the go.
Right.
Okay, so the other thing is the watercolor practice. I really want to do that. Even if it's just a little bit, I got tons of video tutorials and stuff. I want to just get started on one of them.
Right.
Something I have to, it's kind of like the 100 days of making comics, like at least 30 minutes, something like that. Maybe not every day, but like at least just 30 minutes. Come on, do something. And then I'm going to continue my studies for the Michael Hampton thing. I don't know what they are yet because I wasn't sure if I even finished the 100 figure drawing studies. Right. So I'm going to go back and count those, make sure that I got 100 of them, and then move forward with whatever that is. So I'll be, going through the chapter. I always like kind of rewrite stuff that I'm reading because I don't know, I remember it better that way, and draw all the illustrations and stuff in the book. And then whatever the next homework is, that's what I'm going to do. I just don't know what it is right now to say, but whatever the next step of homework is.
Future assignment, TBD.
Exactly. Yeah. Chapter 2 assignment. And I think I'm going to leave it at that and just hope that I do more.
Okay, so a design sheet done for Sisyphean Complex.
Yes.
The next chapter in the, what's the guy's name again? Hampton? The Hampton book.
Hampton.
And to practice some watercolor at least 30 minutes.
Yep.
Okay. It's a modest goal, but next week is going to be crazy, so that's smart.
Yeah.
What about me?
I was just going to say, I read something in the chat that got me all excited, actually.
We'll address the chat then.
Home Slice says, does anybody remember Ralph Snart comics? Yes, and I have a few. I didn't know anybody else knew about Ralph Snart. That's pretty awesome. Actually, I have a 3D Ralph Snart comic.
Whoa.
Box somewhere right next to me.
Picks or it didn't happen.
That's why I stopped talking. I was like, I should find that comic right now.
Go ahead and look for it while I talk about what I'm going to do next week.
Gonna.
All right. So like we said, I only 6 days, and several of them I already know I can't do anything. So I might be over ambitious again, but my plan is to I already lost my notes here. My plan is to do 30 minutes again on the Horror A4, which is not anything significant, but just to keep my finger working on issue 3 at least a little bit each week. So 30 minutes on the Horror A4 again. I want to finish the inks on the Shin Godzilla piece I'm working on, color it, and put it up similar to how I did the Destroya piece that I talked about earlier. So it'll be a pre-order, same whole deal, and try it with this piece as well. And then I want to start my next print for again, another Kaiju Godzilla piece because the show is coming up. I want to say, and I'll have it done to inks or whatever, but because of the way the week's going to go, I don't know how far to commit. So what I am committing to is finishing the inks, color, and get this piece up for sale, 30 minutes on the Horror A4, and work on my next print. That could mean I just get the roughs done. That could mean I just do the design study, or it could mean, hey, it's 100% done. It all depends on how much time I'm actually able to get in. But that is the end of my list. You have something to show us, sir.
Oh,
look at that.
And it's got an ad for a Married with Children comic series from Now Comics. That actually looks really cool. Who did that?
Yeah, the caricatures are pretty well done. I wonder if it was like a Mad Magazine person.
Oh, definitely. It looks really familiar, actually. I don't think it would be maybe Mort Drucker. I don't know. You tell?
Yeah. Maybe a Mort Drucker. Oh, you got to talk so it shows up.
La la la.
Not Mort Drucker. No. As I got a better look, he's much better.
Huh.
Tom Richmond.
Tom Richmond.
That's Home Slice product is saying Tom Richmond.
Yeah, right on.
He's still working. I think I follow him on Facebook.
Yeah.
He's better than that now. That his work is definitely better than that.
Cool.
Well, look at that. Fellow Ralph Snart comics fans. You guys should go on a trip together where you
we should. We're best friends now.
Yeah. Cool. So I think that's the end of our official business. As I said, we'll do this next week, Monday, around the same time on Mike's channel. Before we get into the sign off, if anybody is in the Q&A, in the comments, has any questions or comments or anything other than Ralph Snart, since that's already been addressed, now is the time. This is your time down here to make your questions known, to make your concerns, your comments. Throw them at us in text form, and we will return them to you volleyed with our mouth noises.
Yep.
This is a limited time offer because then we have to go. So while we wait for those questions to queue up, next week I realize it won't be 168. It'll be 144.
Oh.
So we might need to figure out how to address that issue on the show.
We're going to need a whole new song.
Is it even possible? Is it even possible?
I don't know. What rhymes with 144? Probably more than 168, actually.
144. You're a bore. Go through a door. Sean Snore. I went to school with him.
We're bad to the core.
Oh, there you go. Oh wait, a question is coming through right now. Did it? Did it? Did it? Did it? Yada Smelkin says you both mentioned which comic artist you like in weeks past. Which comics do you recommend from some of your favorites? So looking for recommendations of comic artists that are our favorites. That is a good question that I might have difficulty answering. If you want to go first.
I might have difficulty answering as well. Well, let's see. Some good ones that I have really enjoyed recently. I could go that route actually. Is Matt Fraction and Gabriel Ba Casanova. This
Wow,
book
you
is
had it handy.
awesome. Like it is ridiculous. It is like campy spy action drama. It's mature, but it's not like I wouldn't say something like this in heavy metal. It's totally like its own flavor, but really weird, really bizarre, all kinds of cool characters. Totally recommend that. Another, this is an awesome combo. Frank Miller, Jim Lee, and Scott Williams team up for Batman and Robin. Awesome, awesome, awesome book. Another one that I read recently, or fairly recently, is the Court of Owls series from DC, Batman Court of Owls. I thought that was amazing. Another one from Jim Lee, Batman Hush. Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb. Really great comic. Yeah, I don't know.
Did a good job.
Yeah, and many, many more. I like a lot of really short anthology type stuff too. So I read a lot of things like heavy metal and just random anthology books. I got the Mammoth Book of Crime Comics is pretty good. It's like pulp kind of stories and stuff. So I don't know. Oh, Rust, actually. This is one that I don't think gets mentioned enough. Royden Lepp's Rust. This is an indie comic that is just beautiful. It's kind of a weird take on the whole Rocketeer kind of thing. But with like a little alien kid that kind of falls from the sky and lands in a cornfield, and him and a farmer team up, and it's pretty nuts. I don't know. Those are a few.
Damn, you did better than me, but I think you have an advantage that your comics are there, whereas mine are in the other room, so I can't look at them. The only one that quickly came to mind, which isn't even an artist I mentioned last week, because I have mixed feelings about this artist. I think they're a very good artist. Actually, let me screen share because that's one thing I could do here. The artist's name I'm going to mispronounce. It's like James Stokoe or Stokoe. Godzilla Half Century War, keeping on theme with the Godzilla. You can see it's available here. This was 5 issues collected in a trade. I think his art is great, but he also wrote this. You can see that he's American, but it has a very Akira old school kind of look to it.
Cool.
But what I really like is the story. I mean, the art serves it great. It's sort of cartoony, but then a more realistic Godzilla. Like it's a good mix of different styles, and I like the coloring. But the story, the reason it's called the Half Century War is because it follows a soldier in the Japanese Godzilla Defense Force from when he's like 20 to when he's like 70. And every encounter with Godzilla throughout the 50 years. And in the movies, Godzilla, the suit has changed and evolved. And so when they first encounter Godzilla, it's like the old school 50s Godzilla up until modern day. So it's got like, if you've never heard of Godzilla before, it's still a great story and has fun art. But if you are into Godzilla, it does a really good job of being like a love letter to the last 50 years while tying it through the eyes of this one soldier. And it's definitely my favorite Godzilla comic I've ever read, both story and art. Even though he's not my favorite Godzilla artist, I prefer Art Adams, to be honest. But his stuff is great. I know he's done an Alien book recently, which I haven't read, so I can't comment on that. And he had his own book called Orkstain, which I was not as much of a fan of. The art was still good, but the writing just made no sense to me. But yeah, I recommend that book both for the art and the writing. What other? I'm gonna stop sharing because that's the only one I had queued up. Oh, that's my screen. That's my desktop. I mean, the problem is, when I think of artists, I like I love Alan Davis, but like what Alan, like read old Excalibur from like the late 80s.
Right.
Is that really something I want to recommend? I mean, he still works today, but like, I liked some Fantastic Four stuff he did. A lot of the artists I like don't necessarily have a definitive run. And I'm really just drawing a blank. I apologize for the lackluster answer, which is why I'm glad you had a much better one.
It's hard to think of on the spot, right? Because even in what I listed, I didn't necessarily list like all of my favorites, or even all of
Right.
my favorite artists or writers or whatever. Just love comics,
Right.
and very visual too. So a lot of times I might like something, but I just like the look of it or the feel or tone or
Right.
whatever.
I get the
Don't even
call.
necessarily remember what it was.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you're talking about the art, it could be amazingly well drawn, but the story didn't necessarily stick with you for the next 10 years. You just like really
Yeah.
liked it in the moment. Maybe I'll try to have a list next week, just to be a little bit more complete, because I feel like I'm failing this question. But without going and looking at my comics, I'm just drawing a blank. Like I said, I could list artists I like, but not recommend specific books other than that one I just recommended.
One that I didn't recommend that I should have actually, because I just realized when we did get that question, someone had asked our favorite artists, and I mentioned Ian Gibson. He's one that hasn't really done a whole lot other than the one that he's best known for, which is the Ballad of Halo Jones. Oh,
you mentioned that a lot.
I love that comic. It's like kind of known as sort of like a feminist, like a feminist icon of a comic book, but outside of that, it's just amazing storytelling. You follow this person. It's literally like a rags to riches to rags to glory to poverty kind of story. It's very like a wavelength.
Yeah.
And it really feels like you're following somebody's like epic life, but also, in the lows, they're very normal lows, and it deals with death and loss and fame and all these different things. And on top of that, it's wild, weird sci-fi with mutants and space battles and crazy stuff like that. I can't recommend that book series enough. And actually, they just re-released the it's 3 books, and they just re-released the first one of a redone version in color. Some people have some different opinions about whether it should have been colored or not. It's like 30 years old at this point, so it's really kind of being done up. But you can still find different versions of it on like eBay for fairly cheap. It's not easy to find actually, but it's out there. Definitely recommend that.
Cool, man. Yeah, and I've heard you mention that before. I was gonna. I thought of one other thing I could recommend, a more recent one. Let me screen share. And I wanted to pull it up real quick. It's a book called Black Science, but I accidentally autofilled Black Science Man. And it's
oh, jeez.
But I guess a lot of people are like, who's that Black Science Man?
Yeah, I guess so.
But what I was looking for was Black Science, which is written by Rick Remender, and I actually forget the artist's name, Matteo Scalara. And this is a case where I really, the rating is like all over the place, and like not, I'm trying to click on the wrong window here. Sorry. The rating is all over the place, and it's awesome and crazy sci-fi, and at times gets looped around and difficult to follow and comes back. But the art, like the covers are done in this old fashioned, like classic novel style, you can see.
Cool.
But then the inside, the coloring is so great. Let me see if I can find some interior pages here. Yeah, here you go. The color, and I don't normally notice stuff like coloring, so to me that means they must be doing something right. This is from like the first trade paperback, and it continues to be good, but like the first book or two just blew me away because it's at once new and fresh, but also harkening back to like an old school kind of style, like beyond like not stuff I looked at as a kid, but stuff like my dad looked at as a kid.
Yeah, with like a modern twist to it.
Yeah, and so he's got. Oh, I didn't even realize there's a statue of it. That's cool. But so like it's again, and this is a recurring theme, I guess, that it's got like kind of cartoonish faces. Like it's got this realistic look of like monster here, but you see the way they draw the faces, the expressions on them sometimes of the humans. Like they're not super realistic. I'm trying to find a good example of somebody yelling or something. But they live in this world. Here, you can just see like, and I'm not saying it's crazy cartoony, but like that guy going like that's, it's got a little bit of extra squash and stretch to it than what like Jim Lee or somebody would do, but it's still super detailed in the background. And the combination of all that together with a good story, I really, really dig this book. It's probably my favorite book that's come out in the last couple of years.
I think I remember you actually recommending this to me a while back.
Probably it's one of my go-to, like for modern books, it's like the one that always comes to mind.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Real quick, somebody Home Slice is saying, what about Ben Mara? Everyone should like Ben Mara. I don't know who that is. I'm guessing it's
no idea who that is.
Guessing it's actually an indie artist, or
but he sounds like a sweet man.
Can we be sure? Well, you know what? I guess we should look into Ben Mara for next time.
Yeah.
I think we could close it out unless you got anything else.
Could we're just like talking about comics now. That Black Science actually reminded me, just in the process a little bit, reminded me of Mickey Montillo's Warship Jolly Roger, which is a French comic book that has only just recently started to be translated into English, and it is gorgeous. It is absolutely gorgeous. The only downfall to how gorgeous it is it takes him a long time to finish a book.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Is it all like he does everything, colors and letters and all that stuff?
Everything,
Yeah.
and I mean, he does the color holds, where you're painting over the
Color
line work and
holds. That's
stuff.
the word I was looking for when I was talking about my
Yeah.
Godzilla piece. Color holds. Thank you.
It's so illustrative. It almost looks like every single panel is like a Disney or Pixar quality like storyboard, but not like the production storyboards, like the final storyboards
Right.
they're gonna put in a book, and it's just
You don't have an
amazing.
example handy, do you?
Oh, I could easily find one. Yeah.
We'll pull that up. I pulled up Ben Mara. This is the one Home Slice Products was suggesting. This looks like something that'll be up your alley, actually. It looks very like
cool.
80s indie comic, heavy metal.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm not familiar, certainly not familiar by the name, but it definitely reminds me of 80s indie comics. I don't know when he's from. He's got a lot of work here, so he can't be that recent.
Cool. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out.
Does that actually say? Oh, Nasty Dealer. Wait, what? Oh, that looks terrible. That looks like some kind of rapper that is doing his own comic. But it's like a photo. Yeah. I like this one better.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, look for that one, kiddies.
This is Warship Jolly Roger, and you can kind of see it's got a similar sort of aesthetic to it.
Oh, I could see that. What's the name of the artist again?
Mickey Montillo. It's spelled Monttllo.
His stuff is even more cartoony than the Black Science artist.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I definitely see what you're saying. Disney. It is Disney, but it makes me think more Don Bluth, where it's just a little bit more realistic than Disney, if that makes sense.
You could easily see this being turned into like an animation.
Yes.
But not like a series, or it'd be one of those one-off things, like maybe a short in an anthology or something, just because it's so intense to do that kind of work for so many frames per second for so long. But yeah, it's just absolutely gorgeous, and he's one of those artists too that shares literally everything, and so he's got tons of videos and stuff online where he'll show you his process of taking this from beginning to end, and
that's awesome.
Pretty awesome. So yeah, there's the whole character roster.
I like the ship too. It kind of reminds me of the Arcadia a little bit from Captain Harlock, if you remember him. Excuse me. Joseph Spain Rodriguez. Oh, another question. Yada Smelkins. All right, we'll make this be the last question because we're almost at an hour now.
Okay.
Yada Smelkins says, if you could write for any major publisher, which individual and/or team book would you like to work on?
You want to take that one first?
Yeah, which is a little unfair because I've been talking about this recently with the big dog. So, again, major publisher being Marvel, DC, Image. I would want to work on Booster Gold for DC. Right. I think I could do a really good job with that. At least the way I think Booster Gold should be written. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If not, and for Marvel, I would do Nightcrawler. He's been portrayed a few different ways. I prefer the kind of the lighthearted swashbuckling version. So I'd probably shy away from some of the heavy Catholic stuff they've been doing and lean more into the otherworldly pirate space adventure stuff that I like what he does. Cool. So those are the two individual books I would most want to do for those companies. And I guess team books for Marvel, for DC, actually, yeah, for DC, I was talking about this. I think I would probably like to do some version of the Justice League. Maybe there's another book I'd like to do, but just off the top of my head. But a lineup that hasn't existed. My own crazy lineup with characters that we don't normally see. Sort of like a Great Lakes Avenger, West Coast Avenger, or more accurately, more like Justice League International back when Keith Giffen and Kevin Maguire did it. Not with those characters, but the idea being here's a bunch of C-list characters mixed in with like an A-lister or two, and wacky hijinks ensue. It would definitely have a comedic slant to it. Basically, any book I worked on would probably have a comedic slant to it, because as much as I love superhero stuff, I find it hard to take it too seriously.
Yeah.
So I prefer it when it's got a little bit of a wink and a nod. Marvel team book, Alpha Flight for sure. I would like to do Alpha Flight.
Wow. You have definitely given that some thought.
Well, the only one that I could have pulled out, having not thought about it, is Booster Gold. I could have told you that anytime ever. The other three I had thought about, but the recurring theme in all of them is sort of not A-list heroes, not D-list heroes, kind of the mid-range, and all kind of underdogs with like comedic, like I wouldn't want to do the Avengers with Captain America and Thor, like they're the main heroes. Like I always preferred reading the books about the sort of underdog heroes, and so I think that's the books I would like to write.
Yeah, right on.
And you?
Well, for me, it's a much shorter answer because I would not want to write for any of the companies.
Really?
Art would be a different story. I do like, it's kind of a goal in my life at some point. I'd like to at least do a fill-in page for either Spider-Man or Batman. I know that's like probably the most generic kind of pick that you could have, but
that's satisfying the little 10-year-old Mikey.
Exactly. Yeah, I genuinely love those characters and have for a long time. Still do.
Let me ask you this though: if Marvel said, "Hey, we like your art. We want you to work on Spider-Man, but you have to write it too," you would say no?
No, that'd be fine.
Okay, so you'd be fine writing and drawing, but not just writing.
As long as it wasn't in canon, I would do a one-off, like a what if, or one of the graphic novels, self-contained kind of stories. I don't want to write anything in canon.
You got a lot of demands for your hypothetical job.
If I had to, like, if that was the only way that I could, I would just much prefer not to.
Well, so perfect world. You would draw a Spider-Man comic that is not in canon that you didn't have to write.
I would draw one in canon, but writing, I don't want that kind of responsibility.
Gotcha. Because you wouldn't want to worry about tying it into everything that's been happening. You wouldn't want to do that research, or because you'd worry that you'd do a bad one and everyone would hate you.
I just don't want to have that kind of influence on it. Because then it kind of takes away a little bit of the magic for me, actually.
Oh, wow. See, I feel the exact opposite. I love the idea that if I worked on some Nightcrawler comics, that 10 years later, someone would have to reference that or remember that fact that I put out into the world.
That is cool, but I don't know. It would be, just thinking about it, it gives me kind of the creeps, actually.
I actually would, not that I have high aspirations as a writer, but I actually would be much more comfortable writing for one of those books than drawing, because they have such a specific style and there's an expectation for how you're going to do it that I would worry that I would struggle to hit that style and that stuff. But the writing, I feel like, I don't know. I just, maybe I'm overconfident, but I feel like I could do it easier than
cool. Well, if it ever happens, you can write it and then I'll draw it and we'll both be happy.
Hey, all right. Ox says about your Spider-Man worries, it's ironic because with great responsibility, or great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, so that's a good point.
True.
All right, so when Marvel and DC come knocking after seeing the show, I will take all the work. I will take all the writing. I will also, anybody that wants to do any commissions, I take commissions. Mike doesn't want any.
That's true. I'm like the reluctant artist.
All right, well, let's close it out. We're on my channel, so why don't you tell them all about yourself?
I am Mike, otherwise known as Babyface Emirates for right now. And I draw and occasionally write when it suits me and all my demands are met. You can find me on the YouTubes at YouTube whatever / Mike Emirates, or you could just type my name in Google, actually, and a lot of stuff will pop up. Instagram, spacecatcomics.com. Check out my store, Patreon, all that good stuff. And that's my terrible pitch.
Space Cat. Meow, 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 meow. All right, cool. Well, you're on my YouTube channel, so if you don't know who I am, well, now you do. And if you're not subscribed, feel free to. I'll put links below for Mike and for the other people we talked about. You could also find me on most places on the internet as Gazbot. On Instagram, it has 2 T's. I do have that Godzilla vs. Destroya pre-order still going until Monday, up on my Etsy store, Gazbot, and I will soon, hopefully, have the Shin Godzilla up there too. You can find me everywhere else. I am at Target a lot, and later I'll be at the movie theaters watching Rift Tracks, so maybe I'll see you there. Meanwhile, we'll be back next week, but it'll be Monday around 4 p.m. Pacific Standard California time on Mr. Mikey Emmeritz's channel. And until then, thanks for watching live. Thanks for watching recorded. Thanks for being a friend. Bye.